Thank you. I'm not used to being introduced as the main event. That's a little weird. Okay. So again, my name is Michael Gilliland. I'm the organizing director of the coalition group Caleb. Caleb is a coalition of faith communities, labor unions, community nonprofits, and organizations working on systemic change issues. And so my role is an organizing director, but in simple terms, I'm a community organizer, okay? Now, community organizing is one of those phrases that people hear bandied about all the time, and we never really talk about what it means. So I want to take a moment and talk about what community organizing actually is, okay? So think of yourself and your own private life, your private relationships, your close family and friends, and then step outside of that into the public world that you exist in every day. What are the organizations and institutions that you interact with or have an effect on your life that you participate in? You know, get what I'm saying? When you walk out your door, what are the types of institutions that are affecting your life? Anybody?
City government.
City government, great. What else?
Unstable power grid.
Unstable power grid, absolutely.
High school officiating.
High schools, and all schools. What else?
Public transit.
Public transit.
Police.
Police. Nobody said their work yet. What's that? Yeah. What else?
Church.
Church.
Traffic.
Or faith communities if you're a part of one. Traffic. Okay? All of these are things that you're participating in, but you're also not controlling, right? All of these things affect you, but there are all these systems that are having an enormous effect on all of these things that are determining how these institutions operate in a way that affects your life. Take schools, for instance, okay? What are some of the systems that affect and determine how schools operate in a way that affects your life?
Curriculum. Taxes.
Okay? Taxes, curriculum, school traffic. And who is making those decisions?
Not us.
Not us. County mayor? Okay.
Parents, students.
Okay. Take a faith community, okay? What you may be participating in a faith community, but what are some of those institutions that are having effect on decisions that are being made within your own faith community? For anybody that's a member of a donors. Okay, what else? What's that? Politics. Okay. Everybody's answering to somebody, right?
IRS.
The IRS. Absolutely. Do one more. What's an institution that's being affected that is involved in your everyday life? What's a system that affects those institutions? Take your work. What's the power that's affecting your work life, that's deciding how you're living every day?
Show up at 8, leave at 5.
Okay, who's setting that rule?
Your employer. CEO.
Sure. CEOs? Yeah. Investors? People with a lot more money and capitalism. Yeah. This is good because it gets to the point that sometimes these systems can seem very esoteric. Capitalism is one of them. Well, white supremacy, racism, patriarchy are also systems that are affecting institutions that we are a part of. This is community organizing. Community organizing is about building the power of a community to affect the systems that affect them. How do we do it? How do we act in such a way that we can start having an effect and making determinations that meet our needs? It's not simple, it's not easy, okay? But beginning to think about how we can organize to have an effect. That's what community organizing is all about. That's why Caleb was started, to build powerful public organizations that can start to have an effect on these systems that are affecting us. Now, I was asked to speak and talk primarily about reflection. And I think that this gets to the heart of what it means to hold power in society and how power operates, how these decisions are being made that affect our lives, because it's not easy to think through. Power often operates invisibly, okay? Y'all probably know this story about fish, that two young fish that are talking, and an older fish comes up and says, "Hey fellas, how's the water feeling today?" And he swims away, and one of the younger fish turns to the other and said, "What the heck's water?" All right? Fish don't see the water. And that, for us, power often operates very similarly, okay? That we don't know or recognize how it's affecting us. And it takes reflection as a discipline to think through how we're being impacted, not just as ourselves as individuals, but as communities, and what are the opportunities for us to do something about it. That's a discipline, and we have to take the time to sit with ourselves and to think about us, our community, however you define it, but we all are building a community within this society or a part of multiple communities. How are our communities being affected by these larger decisions, and how can we begin to build a sense of agency? So let's talk about one of those systems that Caleb operates with. How many folks are familiar with the term mass incarceration? Y'all raise your hand? Most of you, okay? Mass incarceration refers to a set of decisions in America that began in the 1970s to heavily weigh towards incarceration as a way of addressing crime and societal problems. It's led to an explosion in prison population where by far the United States is the largest incarcerator in the world. I mean, we incarcerate more people than the next 16 countries combined. If you were to take every incarcerated person in the United States and put them in one city, that city would be larger than Philadelphia, okay? It's an enormous problem that has enormous effects on our communities, on our lives. It's a preference towards incarceration that doesn't work and harms our communities. And Tennessee is a key leader of that, okay? Tennessee incarcerates more people than the continent of Australia, even though Australia has 4 times the population, okay? And our local story is very connected to all of that. How many people knew that the private prison industry was birthed here in Hamilton County? Okay? In 1984, Silverdale Detention Facility was the very first private prison conversion in the United States. And the year after that, Corrections Corporation of America was able to successfully bid to take over state facilities. It's what began the private prison industry. That's part of our legacy and our story. And it's had enormous effects on our lives and our communities, okay? Tennessee, and Tennessee's history of incarceration is a fundamental threat to democracy. Right now, in our state, 22% of African Americans can't participate in electoral decisions because of previous conviction histories. 22%, 1 in 5. All right. So when we're thinking about the change that we want to see in our communities, when we're thinking internally at Caleb, we understand the role that the criminal justice system is playing towards keeping many of our members of our communities from having any sense of agency over their own lives. And a lot of that is driven particularly in the pretrial process. So before a person is convicted of anything, before it's determined guilt or innocence, everything that goes into keeping people incarcerated and to stacking up the cards against them, that's something that we're keenly focused on in Caleb. So much so that in 2018, we launched an organization called the Hamilton County Community Bail Fund. We raised money in order to create a revolving fund that allows us to post bond for individuals that can't post for themselves. Because we believe fundamentally that people should not be incarcerated merely because of the size of their bank account. And we were able to be successful. We raised $20,000 in 2018. We raised $100,000 in 2019. And in 2020, we raised $550,000 to capitalize the fund. We have a full-time staff person, a bail fund manager that actively works to identify individuals that can bring people out of the jail system and give them a true, tangible sense of innocence until proven guilty. And since the time that we've established it, we've been able to post bond for around 300 people locally, okay? Now, all of that is good, but it was never just about posting bond for individuals. Because what we're about at Caleb is about building power and affecting the systems that affect us. Our goal is to fight to change that system so that nobody is being kept in custody merely because of the size of their bank account. We've done that in a couple of ways, pushing successfully for the county to adopt court notifications for the first time, for instance. As late as just 2 months ago, if you were arrested locally and got out of jail, you'd be given a sheet of paper with your court date. If that court date changed, nobody notifies you. For all your further court dates as your case drags on, there's not a system for knowing. And if your case was bound over to a grand jury, you're out of luck. Bailiffs are literally telling people, you're just going to have to call back every week until we set a court date for you, okay? That's the system. And that's the system, when we think about the fish, what's invisible in our community? What are the kind of decisions that are affecting us that we often don't even know about, all right? Just last month, volunteers with Caleb participating in a court watch, a general sessions court, were able to identify a man that had been kept in custody for 60 days before seeing a judge. Picked up because he missed a workday off of a marijuana charge and was lost in the jail system. So they never set a court date for him. In fact, he wasn't even supposed to be in court that day. The jail just put him on the van because they didn't know what to do with him. 60 days lost. Now imagine what that would have done to your life if that had been you. We have to do better as a community. And if we're going to build power around criminal justice and fight for a better system, then we have to be smart about it. We have to understand how that's impacting us and the ways that power operates so that we can fight back. That's reflection. And it takes a time for reflection to see where you are in that process. Not just about what should be done, because we're often trained by a dominant society that treats all of us as spectators rather than actors. And we have to make a determination how we're going to move from having an opinion about a thing to really doing something about it. So let me talk briefly about my own motivations, how I got into this work and what's driving me. A lot of it that brought me into this work is a determination to build a public life that could fight for working class people, all right? And I want to see a strong labor movement resurgent in Chattanooga. So when we talk about reflection, reflection is a discipline, but it's also a mirror. And taking the opportunity to find out what is it that's actually compelling us in the directions that our life is going. You know, the grandfather of community organizing in the United States is a man named Saul Alinsky. And Alinsky used to say that people are a pile of undigested experiences. We're just bandied about. We don't know necessarily, we're not taking the time to know why we're acting, but we're acting, and we're being acted upon. And it's often, we have no understanding of why that is. So for myself, my own reflections really go back to my upbringing. I'm a born and bred Chattanooga, and I've lived here all my life. My family's got deep roots here. You go down to Ross's Landing, and you see the original 52 white settlers on the plaque. Gilliland is one of those, all right? My family grew up very poor. very poor working class. My dad was a Pentecostal pastor. And when I was born, my mom worked at a textile mill in Rossville. She stayed just long enough to get maternity leave. And as soon as I was born, then she bounced, okay? So we were living in basically North Red Bank at the time. And y'all probably know, some of you that are local, the Sheriff's Annex that's over there in North Dayton Boulevard. That used to be a Kmart. And my mom got hired at the Kmart and would walk to work every day as a cashier in the 1980s. And when the very first Walmart opened up in Chattanooga and Hickson, my mom was one of the first people to be hired at Walmart and quickly got promoted and became a department manager at the local Walmart. I remember this time very clearly, the sense of how my mom was being overworked, of my dad waking me up at 2 in the morning because we had to go pick up my mom after doing inventory. And she would go to sleep so burdened by work, she would have nightmares about stocking shelves and wake up more tired than what she went to sleep at, okay? After 7 years, she finally quit because she couldn't take it anymore. And when she quit, she was making below $9 an hour, all right? And I've had a lot of terrible jobs in my life. I know my own experience. But when it comes to like real motivations for me, I still have a fundamental chip on my shoulder about what that meant for my mom and for my family. And the frustration, anger, and rage that my mom felt like she had no other opportunity but to bounce in order to get her needs met, okay? I don't believe working class people should have to deal with that. And the only way that we're going to do to be able to change that situation is by organizing to do something about it. But working class people have more power over their economic conditions, over their jobs. That's my motivation. That's how I got into this work. Now, Chris mentioned a particular project that I helped to develop back in 2016 called The People's History of Chattanooga. It's an attempt to talk about the history of our city, the stories of social movements and activism that have left a mark, and yet we're totally unaware of. And I can speak to that. Most of the stories I talk about as I was growing up in Chattanooga, I never had the opportunity to hear about. So we launched this project in a partnership with the graphic design department at UTC to talk about the first theme, which is the history of white supremacy and anti-racist resistance in Chattanooga, from the founding of the city all the way up to the modern day. How did white supremacy help to build our city, and how did the resistance to it also help to build our city? What do we know about those stories? What do we know about the protests, the streetcar boycotts 50 years before Martin Luther King and the Montgomery bus boycotts? What do we know about the fact that our city was forced to change its whole form of government in 1989 because a federal appellate court determined it fundamentally racist? How much of that? I was alive during that, and I didn't know anything about that, okay? What is it that we're swimming in that we don't recognize? We have to think about it, okay? Now, this isn't hopefully meant to be discouraging because I'm in a room full of creatives, okay? And the wonderful thing about reflection is that it's empowering, because far from reflection finding no opportunities for action, in fact, there are 1,000 ways to act. There are 1,000 ways to work together that we're just not taking advantage of as a community. It's on us to be able to determine, but the options are plentiful. And I hope that this can be a motivation for you to think about your place in these larger systems, the role that you're operating in, and the outlets for you to have a sense of autonomy and power over the systems that are affecting you. Thank you all so much for your time. Appreciate it.